Hey, good morning. Welcome to the InternNE powered by Exarban webinar. I'm Shauna Dorsey, here with three of my friends here to talk about a new initiative that they've launched. So we've got Wayne Brown, Heath Mello, and Dan Hoffman. I'll go ahead and let you guys introduce yourselves, and then after that, we'll roll into the questions.
All right, good morning. My name is Wayne Brown. I'm the president and CEO of the Urban League of Nebraska, and I'm really excited to be here today as an Omaha native and a proud Creighton graduate.
Good morning, Heath Mello, President CEO of the Greater Omaha Chamber. Excited to be able to spend some time with Shauna, Wayne, and Dan, all good friends, all great organizations and partners with the Chamber to be able to talk about a very, very exciting initiative that we're very, very excited about to talk with everyone today about.
Good morning, Dan Hoffman, CEO of Invest Nebraska. As we've all previously said, we're extremely excited to talk about this initiative and how we're all partnering to help Nebraska's small businesses.
Excellent. So we'll get right into it. Today, we're talking about the Nebraska Opportunity Exchange, which I was excited to learn about a few months ago. Just really exciting work, and I know y'all have been at it for a little bit. So can you tell us about how this partnership came to be and what each of your organizations is focused on in this initiative?
A lot of this initiative came from really the people of Omaha, just everyday Nebraskans. We've been at the Urban League of Nebraska working with families, helping them find opportunities in school, helping them find connections to jobs. And over the last 95 years, some of those folks have moved on to the business world. And so this came from a really a direct plea from the folks we work with on how do we coordinate this system in order to find a way to scale our businesses and sustain our businesses through contracts. And so really it was just answering that call from individual business owners. How do you navigate this system?
From the chamber's perspective, we serve members, both very, very large employers who are members and very, very small businesses who are members. And something that we've been identifying is a number of small businesses throughout not just our membership, but across the community who really have been approaching not just us, but approaching the Urban League and many other partners along the way. Who've been very candid about wanting to build stronger relationships with other businesses through contracting. And that was something that we wanted to acknowledge and something we wanted to be able to find a way to build better bridges with. And so that was something that we felt in terms of our existing membership that we could find a way to fill that void, to be able to bring together our existing resources to not duplicate something that was already being done with our friends, the Urban League, who was already working in this space. And so we felt we could come to the table and partner with our friends to maybe see what we could do working on some bigger, broader initiative together.
Yeah, and I might add, Invest Nebraska came into the conversation, I would say, last summer with an introduction that really with Wayne. And I known Heath from previous years of working at the legislature. But Invest Nebraska's core mission is how do we develop more capital access, especially for technology and high growth type of businesses. And we've been doing that fairly well. In this introduction with Wayne last summer, we came to the conclusion that yes, there was another need for capital access, especially around these small businesses trying to enter the procurement process. And so through many conversations with Wayne and his team, we've created more partnerships and are looking for more ways to develop small businesses and entrepreneurship in Nebraska on a statewide basis. And so we're extremely excited to partner with the Urban League, which, has had a footprint in Nebraska since the 1920s, which is phenomenal. So it's a great, great partnership that we look forward to seeing as it develops.
That's awesome. Okay, Wayne. So tell us, what's the problem that you're trying to solve through this initiative and maybe one of your biggest milestones so far?
Gotcha.
Not your, you all's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a community issue, and I think that's why this partnership is so strong. I mean, it has different parts of the community working together on a very singular problem. How do you create wealth in communities that may have uh, neighborhoods that have concentrated poverty, right? There's a couple of ways to get out of that concentrated poverty. One is home ownership, the other is small business ownership. And we felt that this was a problem that, had some pieces that we could attack. And so when you look at that small business navigation problem, we figured we would need help. We had access to people in the community since 1927. We've had relationships with the chamber, and just recently with Invest Nebraska, we thought could bring a holistic solution to this. And so the problem is, how do you bring wealth to communities that have been suffering over the years? And we think that at the Urban League, business ownership is one of those ways. And so we had to reach out to help to some of our partners who have access to corporate relationships, those who have with banking relationships and venture capitalists. And so one of the biggest milestones that we are really trying to accomplish, and something that we've been able to do over the last few months, is really encapsulated in one story. Victoria Mbaku. Victoria Mbaku moved to Nebraska from North Carolina, military veteran, looking to figure out how to navigate North Omaha and the business community. And we were able to help her not only figure out where to go to the grocery store and where to find her son a haircut. We were able to connect her with people at the chamber. We were able to help connect her with investors and people like Invest Nebraska. We were able to help connect her to companies like MCL in the city. And so she took this small business, which was an asphalt company that was previously owned by a good family group here in Omaha, has expanded it with her experience from the military. And now she's connected to corporate contracts, city contracts, and then and I've even seen her at chamber meetings. So I think she's really integrating into the community quite well. And so if we can do that for a number of businesses in the community, we can really change the character of what our city looks like.
That's a great story. And then, I'm always thinking about the workforce development angle on this as well, which I know we'll get to, but there's just so many like ripple effects, from those sorts of outcomes. So thanks for sharing that. Dan, how are you ensuring, and just anyone who wants to answer this, but starting with Dan, that businesses across rural and urban Nebraska are aware of and benefiting from this exchange?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, in our participation, again, it's going on since last summer, and now participating in some of the cohorts classes that have been occurring up in Omaha. I think going forward is spreading the word in Nebraska, because this probably is a big issue across the state when you think about small businesses trying to access a procurement process, whether it's at the federal government level or local or state, and then bringing in the private sector. And so I think it's just a matter of getting the word out. The great thing is, I mean, we're a fairly large landmass state, but we only have 2 million people. And, it's just, there's a couple degrees of separation. And I think for most of us, we all want small business to succeed, especially when you're talking about bringing in new dollars from outside the state into the state. And I think that's a win-win for the state as well as for the entrepreneurs, and builds that wealth creation as Wayne spoke about. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think, you're dealing with, our organization statewide, Wayne's organization statewide, the Omaha Chamber, which is kind of the catalyst for corporation small business. And then just how do we amplify the message? And I think that's going to be a continual process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's small population, big land masses is a huge issue. And so the more opportunities we can create in greater Nebraska, the better, right?
Right.
We know that a lot of students from our work, they say that they would love to stay in their hometown if they could, but there just aren't as many opportunities. So just, continues to show that this work is really important. Speaking of students, interns, entry-level talent, can you talk to us about what role they play in small business growth?
Well, small businesses, we know, have challenges in trying to secure skilled talent. And we know part of that challenge is they're competing in a very, very competitive marketplace against medium-sized employers, large employers across the entire state. And so, the real opportunity, and this is always a great plug for everybody in terms of learning more about Intern Nebraska, a terrific program that provides businesses of all sizes an opportunity to be able to participate in a program, to be able to build out an internship program, to be able to apply for funding for internships. that, smaller businesses really have this unique opportunity to help kind of grow their own talent, and to be able to help utilize a program like an Intern Nebraska program to grow their own talent, to help kind of build up what they're going to need to do, to really help build that workforce they're going to need. Because the Nebraska Opportunity Exchange is a perfect example, as Wayne and Dan and the entire partnership are building out a variety of different curriculum and courses for small businesses to be able to participate. These business leaders and business owners are having to build that workforce simultaneously. Having programs like Intern Nebraska are so crucial. And I think it's more of like trying to emphasize more and more, whether you're in Omaha, whether you're in Lexington, whether you're in Scotts Bluff. This is just a simple message more and more that people just, we can't tell people enough at the end of the day that for the future of small businesses to succeed, whether they're participating in the Opportunity Exchange or not, for them to not be thinking about growing their own workforce through programs like Intern Nebraska. They're really doing it at their own peril, because no matter how hard we may try with the Opportunity Exchange, workforce is really going to still be, at the end of the day, the foundation of their success. And this is something that, we'll continue to be able to try to do on our end with what Wayne and Dan and the Chamber and all of our other partners are doing. But I think it's more of trying to get this message out of what you and Intern Nebraska and Exarban Foundation and all the other partners involved are trying to do to get this information out about small businesses learning about the vitalness of this program and the opportunities that exist.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I know the next question is asking you, Heath, about how Intern Nebraska can strengthen the pipeline, but I'll answer it. I think that makes a lot more sense.
But what?
But
Also, if you think about small businesses in Nebraska, they're the backbone of the economy, right? And they employ
absolutely.
nearly half of the state workforce. So, if you want to scale internships in Nebraska, then small businesses is probably that pipeline we really need to tap into. So the work that you're doing there and Exarban Foundation, I think, has an incredible future looking at that small business workforce.
Agreed. And I'll just continue to plug Intern Nebraska a little bit. So right now, we're in the middle of a grant application cycle that wraps up on February 28th. For those who are awarded, your contract is a year starting in April 1. So great opportunity. It's a matching grant, $7,500. If you're a small business with 150 or fewer employees full-time, you're eligible for wage reimbursement. So that's a direct impact to your bottom line. The other categories include training, housing, administrative costs related to your internship. So a lot of different ways to leverage the grant to offset expenses and keep talent here. One other important note, through the work at the Nebraska statewide workforce reporting system, I hope I got that right, NSERS, they say that a student that has 2 or more internships in Nebraska is more likely to stick around. So what an easy way, low-cost way to engage talent, help them see if a job is what they want or don't want to do. Sometimes that's as important, in my opinion, if finding that out early on. But just helping them build those relationships with businesses is so critical. So definitely take a look into it, InternNEB.org. On the next question. So this is for all of you, but what challenges do you see that businesses face outside of just, talent not being available, but in attracting and retaining talent and high demand talent? And what are some of the things we can do outside of internships? We know that those work, but how can this initiative, Nebraska Opportunity Exchange, help?
I think a big piece of this is, when you ask the small business owners what their challenges are, I think there is an equivalent when you look at workforce. One of the things is lack of awareness. What are the opportunities out there to contract, to be able to scale and grow your team? They also have challenges navigating a complex governmental and corporate procurement system. And then sometimes there's limited access to capital on that piece. That also has a direct correlation to these companies' ability to grow and scale, to the ability to bring on new workforce and strengthen the economy of Nebraska. So I think the small business health and workforce health are tied together in the small business arena.
I would echo everything Wayne just said, and part of it is some of my higher ed experience, both at the community college and at the university level. Higher ed, to be candid, sometimes is very complicated, and some of our workforce development systems at times can be very complicated too. And when you are a small business owner or an entrepreneur, and you are dealing with everything from state, city regulations to working with financing, you may have to deal with bonding issues to get your business off the ground, to try to navigate through sometimes complex workforce and education training systems to help try to get a new employee or to find new employees through those efforts. It's very difficult. And I think that's something that, anything we can be looking at from a partner perspective, to find ways to help, is Wayne kind of said, to make some of this programmatic opportunities a little bit easier for small businesses and entrepreneurs to navigate, to bring that information a little bit easier for them to digest when it comes to identifying opportunities for them to either find new employees that they can get, or to help them upskill some of their employees they may have to help them boost what they need for their existing workforce. I think that's just something that we always need to be thinking about, because medium and larger size employers clearly have the resources and a little bit more of the tools and sophistication to be able to do that. But I'll be honest, I hear that still from a lot of larger employers, that the system's complicated. So if it's complicated for medium and large size employers, we have to always assume how much more difficult it is for those five employee businesses or smaller, to really navigate sometimes complex systems. And I think that's something that, when it deals with that ongoing super competitive environment for talent and workforce, the easier we can make it for entrepreneurs and small businesses, the better we can make it for them to be able to succeed.
Yeah, and I would agree with both Wayne and Heath. I think that the opportunities around increasing the top line for small businesses, which is their revenue, and being able to help them navigate those challenges, is a piece that is something you just can't find on the internet. I mean, it's something that we have to go ahead and think about purposefully. How do we build out this curriculum that the Nebraska Opportunity Exchange has developed, and then just replicate that? And I think that's part of it. And then that obviously flows into hiring a workforce. But at the same time, as Wayne indicated, I mean, capital is one of those issues for these small businesses. And I think we also need to think about, we just can't leave it up to banks and venture capital to say, well, it's their problem, they need to figure it out. No, it's the state's problem. We need to, collectively come together and try to figure out some of those problems and which is the best way to address them. And so, the other thing is these classes, what I will tell you, I mean, when we participated on a Saturday morning up at the Omaha Chamber in January, I mean, we met 20 plus entrepreneurs that were not in our pipeline, but, we were able to talk to them about what we were doing and why we were doing it for the state of Nebraska. But it just was another opportunity to connect and, say, hey, here's a resource for you as entrepreneurs. And if that doesn't fit with what you're doing, there's other resources, and it's just a matter of making those connections. And so I'm really big on, entrepreneurs ask a lot of questions, and it's just a matter of getting the connections for them that maybe they don't currently have, but that are out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so building on that question, this is for Heath and Dan, but how do you see the Nebraska Opportunity Exchange fitting into the state's larger workforce and economic development strategy?
Well, I mean, what I might add is, I mean, I think the overall economic development strategy of the state, and Heath knows this from his time in the legislature, is, historically we've done a lot around traditional economic development, which is tax incentives, workforce programs, and those continue, and we need those as a state. I think over the last 13 to 15 years, there's been more of an emphasis, not only in Nebraska, but in other states, around entrepreneurship and growing our own. And, the data shows that's where job growth occurs, is in with, businesses that are less than 2 years. So we know what the data is telling us. And I think the state has been more progressive in the sense of looking at how can we do more as a state in that. And I think this is just another piece of that, is how do we help those small businesses? Again, they're looking for revenue and revenue opportunities. And this is tying them in to a piece that currently exists, but they might not know how to navigate. And so I think it really just attaches on really well to this entrepreneurship, technology-based economic development strategy for the state.
You know, Dan captured it, I think, very well, Sean. I think that from a historical perspective, that's where we've been going over the last, I would say, the last decade plus. You know, from a pure, just, you know, to break it down, it's a nice philosophical change right now. We're seeing that from a broader perspective, that we're looking more inward to ourselves from an economic perspective, in terms of looking to our businesses locally to how to build better relationships with each other, from big businesses working with medium and small size businesses, with small businesses looking to other institutions to help them grow their pipeline of talent through programs that traditionally may not have ever looked to help grow small business workforce development or workforce pipelines. And I think that's just some of the innovation that we've been seeing over the last 5 to 10 years. And I think, you know, other cities, other states have been doing this probably a lot longer than we have. But the fact that we've moved in this direction, we're seeing more of that partnership, both between business and business, between philanthropy and business, between philanthropy, government, and business, in all of these sectors kind of working together, in really trying to, once again, create kind of a closed loop system, in the sense of how do we find ways to keep more and more of our existing investments in Nebraska, in our regional, at least in Omaha, our regional greater Omaha ecosystem. Lincoln's trying to do the same thing. Other areas of the state are trying to do the same thing as well. I think just speaks volumes that we're starting to acknowledge that we can be smarter about what our existing programmatic areas can do, when we really focus on collaboration. And I think that's part of it. Is, you know, part of the whole webinar today was talking a little bit about a program that, you know, all of us have been doing something in our own ways around talent, around small business development in some capacity or another. And, you know, it really stemmed from Wayne and the Urban League kind of being able to bring partners together behind a bigger, broader cause, and thought of how do we galvanize resources and partnerships and leadership behind a bigger, broader initiative to have a bigger impact. And I think you start seeing that. And as Dan just said, this strategy has been changing over the last decade. And I think, if anything, it's exciting to see where it's going to go, as it impacts entrepreneurs, small businesses, not just in Omaha, but arguably across the state.
I agree. And that collaboration is so critical, like Dan mentioned, and we all forget sometimes Nebraska is a small state.
Mhm.
So it's only possible to get more done together. That it makes so much sense. Okay, we have just a couple minutes here, but one other question that, well, there's several questions that are important, but this next one about educational institutions, we talked a lot about the business community and partnership and growth there. But Heath, let's start with you on this, given your background. But what role do you see educational institutions and training providers in general playing in strengthening small business capacity? We'll start with you.
Well, you know, a couple things. I think, if anything, you know, with what we're seeing with the Nebraska Opportunity Exchange, I think, you know, Wayne and the team have been able to galvanize a lot of partnerships with different entities that are bringing a variety of different curriculum and training partners to the table already. So we're grateful. I think, if anything, the partnerships that are at the table right now with the exchange, we're grateful in terms of everyone who's come to the table to help engage in this effort. I think, though, right now, higher education, candidly, is kind of at a crossroads nationally, in terms of what's happening with a lot of things coming out of Washington, D.C., in terms of the future of what higher ed may look like, in terms of the kind of the future of what taxpayers are expecting from kind of a value proposition of higher education. And, you know, from a pure, you know, business perspective of what small businesses may be looking for. being able to look at more and more relevant certifications, micro credentials, things of that nature, I really think there's a tremendous opportunity more and more to see higher ed provide that kind of micro credentialing education to help provide small businesses. I think we're lucky in the metro area, and I think we see it a little bit across some other areas across the state of higher ed institutions willing to work with partners to provide some of those micro credentials that really are geared towards smaller businesses. And I think if anything, we're seeing that with the Opportunity Exchange, some activities here in the Omaha area. But I think it's a unique opportunity that truly, I think, with partnerships that we see that are currently flourishing right now, small businesses have a pretty large voice to be able to to really ask education institutions to really innovate a lot more in terms of what they're doing in terms of the education and training that is geared more towards what they need. Not that traditional 4-year or 2-year degree programs aren't relevant. They are, but I think clearly we're seeing the economy change a little bit more where a micro credential and certain things that will help a small business flourish a lot faster right now in the fast changing economy may be something that higher ed needs to be willing to adapt a little bit faster to really help spark economic development in the future.
I love it. Okay, final question here, and then we'll close it out. But we'll start with Wayne on this one. But what advice would you give to a small business interested in leveraging the Nebraska Opportunity Exchange?
So when you have amazing partners like Dan and Heath, it really looks at, this power of collaboration and relationships, and also accessing free and vetted resources like the Nebraska Business Development Center, Apex Accelerator. There is no need to pay for this advice. There's free vetted services that are out there. And that's why partnerships with such historic organizations like the Chamber and Invest Nebraska help to bring some confidence and bring those relationships together.
Any other thoughts, insights there?
I think for businesses, if you're a business owner, if you're a company that's watching or engaged with this webinar or learn more about this, I think the biggest thing is there is a tremendous opportunity in terms of engaging with the exchange in terms of networking with smaller businesses who can provide a service possibly to your business or your company. I think we look at it, we're looking at this always from what can be done to help, grow and help build more sustainability for small businesses. But there are a tremendous amount of medium and larger sized businesses that clearly do a lot of contracting and have to outsource a lot of services day in and day out to help make their business continue to be successful. And that's something that we're constantly looking at from the Chamber, is making sure that businesses across the greater Omaha region are thinking about, as they're trying to do contracts with companies and services outside of Nebraska, that there's going to be a tremendous amount of companies here going through the exchange that they should be thinking about, can I do business with these small businesses here in the metro area? And as this starts to kind of grow and expand outside of the metro area, this is an opportunity for businesses across the state to be exploring. Because once again, the more we can be having businesses in Nebraska to be looking inward, to be looking to do business with companies inside their city, inside their region, inside their state, that keeps more of our funding and more of our investment in Nebraska, in our local ecosystem, which once again, as Wayne said earlier, builds more wealth, builds more investment locally. And I think we know we can't keep all of that funding, all of that money and investment in Nebraska, but the more of that we're able to do, we see more of that impact in a local sense in our communities and in our state. And I think that's something that we want to consistently try to remind business owners and employers and companies, not just in Omaha, but across Nebraska, is there's opportunities to look locally to do contracting work. And that's something you're going to hear us consistently try to ring the bell, to use that megaphone to try to remind people of those opportunities.
Thank you, Heath. Dan, anything you want to add as we wrap up here?
No, I totally agree with both Heath and Wayne. Number one, I want to thank you, Shauna, for bringing us all together. This gets back to partnerships, and we've done partnerships with some other initiatives with the Exarban Foundation. I just think that's the great thing about Nebraska is people are willing to help. Entrepreneurs, small businesses just have to ask, and they have to also know if they can't get an answer maybe with this person, they just need to keep asking, and they'll find the right person. But Nebraskans are more than willing to always help out in any way, and that's what I love about this state. So love the partnership here. Love working with Heath and Wayne as well. So,
well, I dropped a link in the chat to learn more about the exchange. I'll also include that in the notes on our social content. But thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to seeing where this partnership goes. Very exciting.
Thank you, Sean.
thank you.
Thanks, Shauna.
Take care.
Take care.